Doing something for the first time is wild. And when you think of the outdoors, it's inherently wild. I think the most important thing for me is sharing an activity, sharing what I love with people that have not experienced that or have some kind of barrier related to it. The magic of being able to create that bond, that connection with an activity, a person, a place, that's special.
So we can get right into it. Welcome to another episode of Sincerely Yours Outdoors, kicking it with the crew here. Looking forward to another dope conversation. How we feeling, guys?
I'm feeling good.
Yeah?
Great day. Spent time with brothers. Being able to now, chat with Raheim here and share his story and have him tell it in his own words. Of course, we've been privy to connecting with, and I was so profound, so excited to chat with you after we connected last night and heard your story. I was like, dog. I looked at Marcus. I was like, I can't wait to talk to Raheim.
I appreciate that.
I hope he says yes. And these guys all heard it as well. I was like, his story is gonna be incredible. Yeah. So excited for it now to be in less than 24 hours to be here. So Raheim, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling amazing, but first and foremost, I just want to thank you all for inviting me to even be a part of this and have a conversation with me. My story is my story, and it means everything to me, but at the same time, it's my life. So it's not something that I hold too high. It's just it's the path that I've been walking. So it's who I am. I live it. So I appreciate the gratitude and also the grace you guys have given me and allowing me to have this conversation with you all. So thank you. But I'm feeling great.
Good, great, good. Yeah, thank you, brother. Happy to be sharing this space with you, just like really everyone that we've had a chance to sit down with. But this conversation, I think, is going to be really special for me, just because of my interest in climbing.
Yeah.
And we've had that moment. It's man,
we got more coming, man.
Seeing us out there, man, it's a feeling.
Yeah.
It's nothing like it at the moment. So, what have you been consuming, most recently? Music, any kind of art, composition, film? What's going on that you'd like to share with the viewers?
Yeah,
and the
well, there's a few things. I try my best not to spread myself too thin, but that's hard at times. I'm a creative at heart. I've always been, but the last probably 5 to 8 years, I've really honed in on it and said, fuck it, this is me. I'm gonna own this. And been working on film projects for quite some time now. I just completed an emotional intelligence course. Was super psyched about getting started in that. I got nominated for a grant to take the course because I've been practicing mindfulness for about 3 years now and meeting with a mindfulness coach 1 to 2 times a week and also coaching as well. And a lot of that came from not me wanting to coach others and become a teacher and make money from it, but because I come from a space where being in touch with my emotions doesn't make sense. It's the idea or the mentality of, men don't cry. You got to be the shoulder for others to lean on. You can't lean on another man's shoulder or woman's shoulder because that makes you weak. And I actually heard something recently and also read it. How you look at one thing on internet and then you get served ads and posts based on what you said and what they heard.
Yeah,
but it was something along the lines of, and I mean this with the utmost respect to women, children, babies, and pets, but women, children, and pets are, and again, this is not me, this is what I read and saw, they are loved unconditionally. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you do, where you've been, and how you're living your life. It's unconditional love. Men, we're loved under the condition that we provide, right? So that also means that you can't have emotions when it comes to certain things because you need to be providing. You need to be there ready to spot somebody before they fall, or you're useless. And just having that sentiment be so entrenched in me ever since I was a kid, you know, growing up as a teenager, where I lost my grandmother, my grandfather, and my dad within 2 years. And within those same 24 months, my daughter was born. So I had a lot of shit happening really fast to me at age 22, 23. And it was one of those things where I remember my grandfather passing and me being like, my world is over. And I broke down and cried for probably the first time I could ever remember. But I remember immediately being like, all right, I can't let nobody see this. I was in the room, I punched the door, knocked a hole into the wall, the whole 9 yards. But then I remember just being like, all right, gotta go check on my mom, gotta go make sure my grandmother's good, need to go check on my girl at the time. And that was normal. And I realized as time has gone on and I've grown older that it hasn't helped me, it's hindered me. It's hindered my growth to not be in touch with not just who I am as a man, but as a human. And I said to myself, there's no way for me to learn this skill of being in touch with my own personal emotions by going along, you know, the same path that I've been walking or you know, leaning on my friends and the folks around me, because they're gonna support me the way they see suited best, and that's gonna more than likely be based on how they've seen me progress, not where I'm trying to go from this point on. And I realized that was the work I had to do on my own. So I seeked out a mindfulness coach, got a sponsorship, and I'm super grateful. So that's a lot of what I've been consuming. Was in that course, just finished it about a month ago. Still doing my mindfulness practice. I practice daily, night and day, as in when I wake up and when I go to sleep, not all day. And Alan Watts, man, Alan Watts. I'm a huge Future fan. I'm a huge Freddie Gibbs fan, but I'm also, I don't know if you all are familiar with Alan Watts, the philosopher. Yeah, so huge Alan Watts fan. I've got a ton of his playlists that I just listen to on the daily, and there's just so much meat in the way he saw the world, which is so wild back in the 70s. And listening to it now, I'm like, this dude is talking about my life right now. Like, it bugs me out, but at the same time, it grounds me and reminds me that it doesn't matter where I'm at. Growth is this continual process that we're not in control of, but we live in a society where we're forced to feel like, okay, you finish high school, you got to go to college. You're done with college, you meet a person. You date him for a little while, you get married, you buy a house with a white picket fence, you get a dog, you have one kid, you live happily ever after. That's not how everybody's life is set up. But I always had this ideology in my head based on what I saw on TV and what I was told was right versus wrong, that was the path that I had to lead. And if I was off course at all, my life was screwed. So I've lived a lot of years of feeling like my life is screwed. I can't grow from here. I need to just continue doing what I'm doing, regardless if I'm getting a positive response from it or a negative. I just need to keep doing this because it's almost like the idea of like, I need to save face, right? I need to be strong and continue to push in this direction because it's what's expected of me, versus me saying, I'm gonna get in touch with my emotions. You know, because 5 years ago, I probably would have said it. That's feminine, bro. What do you need to get in touch with your emotions for? Go do some push-ups. You know what I mean? Get strong. And that's not the answer. And I just really hope that the way I've chose to continue to live my life as an adult will affect young adults in a way that's going to allow them to see that you don't have to just live one way based on the way you look, based on where you come from, based on what you were told is right versus wrong. Like, you have an opportunity, many opportunities to change not just your narrative, but the narratives of those that come after you. So yeah, that sums up my consumption.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
That's dope. The strength and the willingness to recognize, and even the more strength to evolve is hard, you know? It's much easier to not do things, you know?
Absolutely.
And that's the plain fact, you know? It's like easy to be like, no, like no, or suppress, you know, all of those things. So to evolve is powerful there. I think in the latest Black album, he says, me today is not who I was a year ago. That should come as no surprise. So kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you.
That's powerful. In digging a little bit further, if you're willing to share, how does that manifest now? You know, you mentioned this journey of 5 years, and again, not with trajectory being linear, as you alluded to, with not like yesterday being better than today, or not today being better than yesterday, and so on and so forth. Like, how is that manifested day by day for you to the man that's sitting here?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. to be completely honest, like it's a fucking struggle.
Yeah.
It's a struggle on so many different levels, and it all comes right back to, it goes right back to practice, right? Because each day that I wake up and I'm like, all right, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing, but you were just doing something completely different 6 years ago. You can go back. I worked in fashion for a long time, and we can tap into that if you are curious. But I kind of fall into this place where it's like I have so much meat in that industry, so much of a network. I could just go back into that and thrive. I hated it, respectfully.
Yeah.
It wasn't me. I didn't feel it. You know, like when I climb, or, you know, when I'm in the outdoors, or when I'm, you know, volunteering with youth, I don't feel that same, I didn't feel the same feels that I feel now. So for me, it's almost like it's the battle against the, I forget what it's called. And this is something else I'll share with you all. Stutz. It's a documentary, Jonah Hill. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. It's about his therapist. But there's this, it's person X, part X. So part X is your shadow, essentially, right? So what I've done, I'll go back, sorry. For quite some time, that shadow, I wake up and that shadow is there. Like, what are you doing, bro? Why are you making films? Since when are you a filmmaker?
Yeah.
Photography? Come on, bro. There's 1,000 other people who can shoot better than you.
Yeah.
Why are you shooting? Why is anyone gonna trust you to shoot? Go stand in front of a camera. That's what you do. Go do that.
Yeah.
Go back to fashion. Go lift some weights, you know?
Yeah.
Go do the things that are easy. Why are we doing this? And then there's me in the mirror who's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna take what you're telling me as in you're a bully. You don't know what you're saying. It's valid and you're making some great points, but you don't know me the way I know me. And I say that to say it's honestly been a constant daily battle with part X to really suppress his perspective of me against what I believe I am becoming. So yeah, it's a daily battle, but it's one that I've learned to not just accept as my process, but I embrace it. And so it's gotten to a point now where when part X comes up, I'm like, here comes the bully, like, come on, throw your hands up, because I know I can beat your ass. Like, I know you got a lot of shit to talk, but I know I can beat your ass. So like, let's fight.
Yeah.
And most times it's over like that now.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, because had I just continued to suppress it, I don't know where I'd be today. I don't know if I'd be sitting here talking to y'all today.
Yeah.
But because I've forced myself to become comfortable with this idea of being completely uncomfortable and alone at the same time,
Yeah.
I think it's given me the strength and the willpower to fight against him.
I love that. Just the inner strength that you're just conveying there is so powerful. Jumping here, let's talk about your origin of being outdoors. And I know, and coming from your story yesterday, I know there's like a continuum of that. But let's go back to like young Raheim,
Yeah.
being outside, being in New York.
Yeah.
You mentioned your grandmother and her setting some boundaries of like where to go. Let's talk about what that looked like for you then.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in Harlem, New York City, and I mean, kids were always out doing whatever they wanted to do whenever they wanted to. We had Riverside Park, which stretched almost, I guess, up into Westchester. Riverside Park doesn't go up to Westchester, but the park along the Hudson runs all the way up and all the way down to Lower Manhattan. But it kind of was the same thing, 103rd to 110th, don't play.
Yeah.
Right? So that was my nature. But I think I don't know if there was a connection between why I decided to pick up rollerblades or a bike to be able to venture out. I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but now that I think back, I think it did. I think those were the legs that I didn't think I had, figuratively, to allow me to be able to venture out in enough time so that I could get, because not of course, but I didn't respect the boundaries.
You gotta test
I mean,
them.
I wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't out doing crazy shit, but
Yeah.
I would ride my bike to Times Square and be like, this is fucking insane. Jet back uptown because I don't want anybody to steal my bike, or
Yeah.
ride over to the Bronx across the bridge,
Yeah.
and see what's what and ride right back. But yeah, me venturing out like that, I think I didn't really get exposed to the outdoors when I was young, but I think being outside as much as I was led me to believe that there had to be something much more than these four walls in my grandmother's apartment, right?
Yeah.
More than four walls, or the housing projects where like most of my friends, unfortunately never left those blocks, until they had to go to school or go to work. And when they didn't have to do that, they were just on the block.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to be able to like push through this idea of me leaving the projects to go hang with my friends from school who also rollerbladed, on 77th Street, on the weekends or during lunch hour on Wednesdays, I believe it was, and to come back through the projects and have my friends calling me names. And it's like, bro, you just slept at my house last night. My grandmother feeds you and your brother and your cousins.
Yeah.
And you're calling me names that and I'm proud to say it hurt me, but it didn't affect me because one, they weren't true. It was more about the fact that y'all supposed to be riding for me like I ride for y'all. If you told me you want to learn how to rollerblade, I would give you my rollerblades, bro, and teach you.
Yeah.
But yet we're the same, but we're different in that sense. So I think just me rollerblading and playing street hockey and then into ice hockey and then BMX racing. I used to go to New Jersey. My grandfather used to drive us to New Jersey, to Secaucus, New Jersey. And it was about 5 or 6 of us at a time. And he would drive us out there, put our bikes in his trunk and strap them down and take us to my uncle's house and let us practice. They'd feed us breakfast and he'd drive us to Secaucus. And it was interesting, but I think Secaucus definitely had a little bit more to do with me wanting to get outside because that was the first time I saw dirt trails, like bike dirt trails, right? I didn't know they existed. I saw them in the X Games, but it was like, that shit is nowhere in the New York, New Jersey, or PA area, but it did. It was right in Secaucus, New Jersey. So I think it probably started there for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm just thinking of our time doing BMX, and it was almost the same. I was like, yo, what the hell are you doing out here? You know, like us being literally the only 2 African-American kids giving it an attempt.
Yeah.
And being looked upon as if like, yo, do you know what you're doing? Like this is an activity that you're new to, but maybe your kind is new to, is what people were thinking of. So we share in that experience. I know that you are entering, from my perspective, like a hierarchy of climbing. Like I look at you and others in this space, and I'm like, man, I just want to be that. I want to be like this individual that can connect with a rock or an indoor climbing facility, see the potential, but also say, yo, this is for us, And just with the time that we've been able to share with you, I felt that connection immediately when you said, I'm a climber, I love climbing, and this is why I love doing it. Because whenever I first entered into the climbing space, people would be like, oh, you climb? I'm like, yeah, but I'm not a climber, which is pretty profound. I climb, but I'm not a climber. It's like the archetype. I don't want to be bound by that or defined by that because I know it doesn't represent what I look like. But when I met you and you immediately said, I'm a climber, I love climbing, I'm like, I want to follow that. I want to be a part of that.
That's dope.
So can you share with us your experience climbing, your love for it, how it was found and how you're sharing it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a really good, all your questions, both of you are really great. So thank you for, again, inviting me to have this conversation. I love talking about this stuff, especially when it's around climbing. But I want to say graciously, I thank the brothers of climbing, BLC, Peter Cooper, Mikhail, and Glache. Those dudes, I met them at the gym, and I started climbing with my daughter. Now, I'll tell you guys that story in a second, but I met them at the gym. And I vividly remember Peter was the GM, actually, or the MOD, manager on duty, same jazz, at Brooklyn Boulders in Gowanus in Brooklyn. And I remember walking in one day, and I seen him before. It was like, I felt like when I saw him, it was like I'd be like, all right, cool. Somebody else is here, cool. He works here. Maybe we could be friends, but I'm not trying to make it weird, bro. Just trying to climb with my kid. And I remember one day he walked up to me literally with his arm across like this, and he didn't make eye contact. He kind of just stood next to me. He was like, yo, you climb outside? And I was like, no. And he was like, yo, there's this festival you got to come to. I'm going to send you the details. You'll give me your number. And I was like, yo, what's your name? But you know what? I'm embracing this, bro. And I thank that dude every day. He's one of my closest friends to this day because he literally forced me to become comfortable with this idea that I thought was not even uncomfortable, was unrealistic, which was not only climbing outside, but being able to collaborate and immerse myself in a group like that were actually, they weren't new to it. They've been doing it. There just weren't a lot of them doing it. And the fact that this newbie coming into the gym within a couple of months gets immediately pulled into it because it's like, I know what you're about to go through because I done been through it, but to avoid you having to go through what I went through, let me introduce you to the homies. And that did a lot for me. It did a lot for me. I can jump right into my story in terms of
Yeah.
how. So my daughter, who's 17 now, who's actually going to college in late August, which is still wild, but that's still my baby. We have a really amazing relationship. I don't want to say she's my best friend because we ain't friends. I'm her father. She knows that shit. Like that's no secret. But that's my little homie. That's my sidekick. And she was, I believe, around like 8 or 9 at the time, and we were meeting some of my friends who have kids who are also her friends that she grew up with at an outdoor festival, which again, for me, it was like an outdoor festival. I thought it was a food festival in Central Park when they say an outdoor festival, because all festivals in New York are like street fairs where it's food and clothes.
Yeah.
So they said it's an outdoor festival, Central Park, just so happened to be Father's Day weekend as well. So we met them, started raining, but it didn't matter, it was all good. We hopped off the train at 59th Street before we went uptown to Harlem and went to the park, and they had like there were these dudes on the stage with saws. I don't even know what the competition was called or the type of what they were doing, but they were essentially chopping the wood into, or sawing it into as small as pieces as possible.
Okay.
And I was just like, what the fuck is this shit? Like, where's the food? Like, so we started walking around, and like Kime Bar was there giving out stuff, and there's juice places, and it was nice. And they had this one obstacle course, which was like literally an obstacle course, like some monkey bars, running through tires, push-ups, pull-ups. And my kid, legit being my kid, was like, Dad, I want to do that. And I was like, Lonnie, chill. Like, there's a lot going on. There's a line, like, because I kind of understood what was happening, but she's at this stage of her life at the time where she's a little sponge, and she's just like, monkey bars, stuff, I want to do it. Let's go.
Yeah.
And not understanding what competition was exactly at that time, and that this was an actual competition. So the guy who was there, who was running the stopwatch, timing people, was just like, let her do it. It's all good. Like, we've had 1,000 kids come and just do it to do it. Like, they're just being kids. But at this point, the same little kid who's held first place has had it since this morning. And it's probably 2, 3 o'clock at this time because they were done at 5. So Lonnie goes to the obstacle course. Everyone's cheering her on. She finishes up. She's embarrassed now because everybody's watching her. She runs over to me and hugs me and is just like flustered. The dude comes over with the stopwatch and is like, she just topped the kid who hasn't been topped since this morning. She pushes off of me. Oh yeah, Dad. Yeah, you gotta go. And I'm like, kid, chill. No, you gotta do it, Dad. And of course, everybody who just seen this kid do this is like, okay, like, come on, daddy, daughter, like, you cannot not do it. Dad.
Yeah.
So I had to put my pride aside, and I did it, and I got first place. And we stood there for maybe a good 3 hours, probably to about 5 o'clock, going head to head with anybody who could beat our time. But we ended the day with first place in the girls category and the men's category, which resulted in a 1-year free membership to Brooklyn Boulders. And that's how we started climbing.
Wow.
And we haven't stopped.
That's dope.
Yeah.
Wow.
Take us through, just continuing that journey. What did climbing look like as you all then immersed yourself in the sport, as you reap the benefits of that your membership? Like, what did that look like from there?
Truthfully, I looked at it when we got it and we started going. I looked at it as like, oh, it's this new thing. I can challenge myself and maybe get a little bit more fit and look better.
Yeah.
Because for me, for a lot of people, for the world we live in, like, fitness is presented to us in a way where it's how you look, how it makes you feel, and what it does for your mental health. And it's almost like, if you think about it, like an upside down pyramid, right? Because your mental health is not that important when it comes to fitness. And I strongly believe that pyramid is completely wrong. It's backwards. It should be the other way around. Mental health, how it makes you feel, and then how you physically look, if that's important to you, right?
Yeah.
So for me, my mentality was reversed. It was about how I look. So I'm like, oh, maybe this is gonna help me with my shoulders, or maybe it's gonna help me with this or that.
Yeah.
But I quickly realized that I wasn't as strong as I thought I was. I was definitely, I wasn't that big, but considerably a meathead that thought, oh, I got muscles. Everybody in here is 50 pounds, little skinny girls, little kids, I got this. Jumped on a V0, V1. I kid you not, every single day for probably 3 months, I was walking out of the gym with my elbows on my sides because my forearms felt heavier than my head. And I just couldn't feel anything, or like, it was ridiculous. And I said to myself, like, I can either just stop because I can't do this, or force myself to learn how to dance on the wall. And I'm happy to say that I have definitely learned not just how to dance on the wall, but I feel like I'm getting to a place where I'm learning to master my body mechanics and helping me to respond to things in a way, almost in like a Zen master way, right? Where I can see a crimp or a move and think really quickly within a split second how I need to shift everything from my toes to a drop knee to get my hip closer to the wall to be able to reach that. I couldn't think like that before. And what that has done for me, absolutely has done for me in business or in anything that I do, is it has allowed me to be a much deeper theoretical thinker, because I don't just see things for what they are at face value as much as I did before. Like, I can see beneath the surface and peel back layers really quickly and understand where it is that I need to go to get there. Maybe I can't get there fast, but at least I have a path in my head, and climbing definitely has given that to me.
Oh yeah, I feel the exact same way. That's what I've learned about myself too, is getting to 25%, 50%, 75%. All of those are accomplishments, and when you can just think of this segment of the route, I'm done here. Okay, let's focus on this. You know, literally hanging, relaxing for a second and saying, I can visualize this, let's attack it and go get it, is the exact same thing I learned about myself personally and in business, entrepreneurship, nonprofit leadership, and with my own family.
Yeah.
It's like, if we can get to this point collaboratively, I'm sacrificing here, I'm planning here, I'm strategizing here, but if we can do this together, especially if someone's belaying me, if we can do this together, we're gonna be okay. So I'm right there with you. And I just wanna say kudos for the fact that I know people that have received free memberships and just haven't showed up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My daughter wasn't gonna let me do
You know?
that.
But
She wasn't gonna she
just
wouldn't have let it
walking
live
in,
down.
walking in is an accomplishment, especially in something new, an activity that's new, a sport that has historically not represented us. Walking through the door and being like, yo, I'm here.
Yeah.
Let's get to it. Let's go on that V0. Let's go on that V1 for 3 weeks, whatever
Yeah.
it may be. I'm gonna keep showing up though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. It definitely, I mean, I can't lie for a second and say that 99, if not 100 full percent, had everything to do with me just being a present dad.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm confident that if my daughter Lonnie wasn't as adamant about when are we going to the gym, we got the membership, when we go, I'm telling everybody, when we going, I'm gonna take my friends, when we going, I probably wouldn't have gone. I probably wouldn't have showed up. You know, walking into a space looking the way I look, covered in tattoos with ear gauges from Harlem. I'm in Gowanus, Brooklyn. Like, I don't belong. I didn't belong, but I'm a dad. So where she needs to go, I'm here. So all of this doesn't matter. What matters is this kid is happy. And I'm super grateful for that. And I mean, even to this day, like, she gave up climbing for some years, which I was really sad about, you know, but it was early 8th grade prior to going into high school, and her friends were playing volleyball. And, you know, I was kind of, I can say it now, forcing her to, you know, I forced her to join the climbing team. She was crushing it, but she's just, and I'm like, oh, they're going to get ice cream. Go get ice cream. She's like, Dad, they're not my friends. They don't even talk to me. And I knew what was happening, but I didn't see it from her perspective, where she's like, I got this big, bushy, long, curly hair. I'm from Harlem. All these kids live around the corner, all go to the same school a few blocks away. And here I am, they only see me twice a week. They're not my friends. And for me, it's just like, you need to stop being antisocial. But I do understand now, and I understood when she decided to stop climbing, that I have to allow her to at least make her own decisions to an extent, right?
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where it constantly took me back to how I was raised, you know, where my grandparents, my mom and my dad, when he was around, they gave me enough information to, from my perspective, then to control my life, when in reality, they were trying to keep me safe. But I said to myself, I can't be that parent that my only response is ever, stay in a child's place. It's none of your business. That's adult talk. So I had conversations, as I still do with Lonnie, to explain to her why we're in these spaces, why I want her to continue to push the envelope. You know, her mom is Filipino, she's half Asian, so she looks different than all kids. You know, they think she's Middle Eastern and she's Dominican and not Black and Filipino. And so she's dealt with a lot, you know, from very early on, from people speaking Spanish to her, thinking she, you know, is from the Middle East. And I was trying to force her to be comfortable with this idea of being uncomfortable, but without the information. And once I realized, after having conversation after conversation with her, that this kid is a critical thinker just like me, and I need to give her the information so she can make a conscious decision for herself, not it being the defining factor, but at least to be able to help me understand how her little brain is thinking. And her response to a lot of that was, I want to play volleyball. My friends play volleyball. I know I'm going to be good. I'm taller than most of them, and I'm athletic. I want to do that. And I want to swim. I want to do ballet. And I put her in all of that, and she crushed it. But I'm happy to say, sitting here now, she's now working at a climbing gym, teaching little kids how to climb. She's a coach now.
Wow.
And she decided that on her own after we volunteered at the gym, and she was like, Dad, I'm back. I want to do this. And I'm like, whatever, kid, you're done. She's like, no, I want to apply for a job here. And I was like, I'm going to connect you. And I connected her. She interviewed, got the job immediately, and she's been there
Wow.
ever since.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
And to think that that perhaps started
Yeah, full circle.
with that.
Yeah.
So moreover, kudos to you for being a present father, first and foremost, mentioning that. Secondly, in reiterating as what Marcus said, thank you for just showing up. You know, like you got that free membership, but gross at that point in time, you gained nothing. You had no proverbial skin in the game. You won it. You didn't even pay for that membership for a year. So at that point in time, it's like, I got nothing in it. I don't even have to go. But what you netted and what Lonnie netted from that is like night and day. You know,
absolutely.
Zero investment, a lifelong love for the sport net from that, which is incredible to think about when you look at it in that perspective. Continue the story forward. How is now with your deep love and passion for the sport and with climbing, how has that nourished you, and how have you nourished and fed that love for it to this stage?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me has been the give back, in not just being a voice to represent youth that look like me and come from the places that I come from, but also to create, and that's a part of why I got into filmmaking, to be able to create content that they also love to absorb every single day, all day, but so that they can see me and other people that look like me doing the things that they may or may not be curious about, right? To kind of change that narrative around Black people don't do X, Y, and Z. Okay, Google it. I bet you're going to see my short film we shot 3 years ago. That's going to change your mind, right? But when I was Googling Black climbers or Black hikers for a project, I couldn't find anything. You know, it was like at the barbecue, picnics, you know, at the beach, but never in the outdoors. And it's like, I know it exists somewhere, but like, how do I help to change that narrative without me having to be too uncomfortable, but allowing myself to get a bit uncomfortable, knowing that I'm not just doing this for me or just for my daughter.
Yeah.
I'm doing this for that kid that lives in Idaho, and he's the only kid in his school that looks like him, and he's like, I want to be an MMA fighter, but nobody does it here, or nobody in my family supports this, but I saw this Black dude who rock climbs, and he's fucking insane, but I'm not gonna rock climb, mommy, but I want to punch somebody in the face for fun, like karate, you know? So if I can help that kid not become violent or punch someone in the face, but to, you know, climb that wall or knock down that wall to get to where he believes he deserves to be, I want to be that. And if I have to spend my life, no, I take that back. I'm going to spend my life continuing to inspire the youth to break down those barriers and push against what society is telling you can or you cannot do, and to chase exactly what the fuck you want to chase.
I love that. Do you want to plug your docuseries?
So the first project we worked on that was an outdoor film, it's called Climb Your Dreams. And it's about a creative from New York City who, like most people in New York, takes the train, rides a bike, you know. And there is this, of course, this idea around people in New York, because we don't have mountains like this that are super accessible or around the corner, you know, or a 30-minute drive, that we don't get outside and get it. So the film is about a guy on the train who's taking the train to work or from work, but he's daydreaming about getting outside. And it's really just to connect the two. And I produced that, and I'm also the subject in the film. And it did amazing. It did amazing. We didn't expect much from it. It was really just me and some friends, Josh Greenwood, shout out to him, who wanted to put together this project to show the world that we're out here doing this shit, you know? And we don't have to respectfully, I love the idea of living in a van and van life, but that's not how my life has ever been set up. And I don't know if it'll ever be set up that way. But at the same time, like I could leave my apartment in Brooklyn at the time and hop on the train and get on the Metro North and go to the Gunks. It might take me a little while, but I can still get there. So we want to be able to show that. And then there's also a project I'd like to share with you all that I don't think I've shared with many, maybe Ron and CJ. But after that project and many other projects in between up until now, we've done a lot, but there's still so many untold stories. And for me, being not only a father, but a father to a girl that I've had a great hand in raising, there's not a lot of people, forget respectfully it just being about showing diversity. Like there's not a lot of women being shown in the outdoors, specifically women of color, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of that reverse idea, like around a man being too emotional, whereas for women or girls, it's they're being tomboys, you know, for doing the stuff that we do. And my daughter does all that shit and crushes it,
Yeah.
and still can do her hair and be like, she's still a girl,
Yeah.
110%. Doesn't change who she is. She skateboards, longboards, surfs, and does all these things that we do together, but she is still a girly girl.
Yeah.
And that's possible, but like when you Google that, there's nothing out there that's showing you that. So a lot of my friends that I climbed with back in New York, a majority of them are women, single women, some of them in relationships and married and engaged, shout out to those. But they're just out here crushing it, doing it, and I'm with them on the daily, and I'm like, this, what I'm seeing you, Atong, Terumi, Haneji, like I'm watching these women crush 7s, 8s on their warm-ups, and I'm like, why does no one know that y'all are fucking badasses? Like, this is like, I'm watching magic happen, but like, there's women out there who are like, I can't do that climbing stuff. It's gonna make me look muscular. I'm not trying to look like I do CrossFit and all these things. These women, half of them are models. Half of them work in front of the camera, but are badass climbers. So I said to myself, how do I create something that's gonna live on past my lifetime, that's gonna allow for everyone from my daughter to women that come in 30 years to see something happen in a space that traditionally doesn't, I don't want to say doesn't accept, but hasn't been as welcoming, right? Specifically to not just Black and brown folks, but to women. How do I create something that's going to live on as an art form that's going to help to inspire, but also affect change, and most importantly, inspire folks to have hard fucking conversations around what our reality is. So I started writing, which I do a ton of. I legit probably have about 15 to 20 movies in my notes that are story formatted. Some are scripted already. And there's this one specific one, it's called Home Free. And it's about a dad and a daughter. And after all I've just shared, I'm sure you all know where that inspiration came from. It's about a dad and a daughter who, the dad is raising the daughter on his own, and they're camping in state parks throughout New York and living off the land. But the truth is they're homeless. But the daughter really doesn't understand that. To her, it's just, we just live off the land. So she, like most kids, becomes of age and decides that she wants to move into the inner city because her curiosities about life outside of living outdoors and being with her dad, who's, you know, a hobo, loving and embracing it. She's just like, I want to do what they're doing. She rebels, moves into New York City, that being Brooklyn, and immediately is slapped in the face with all of the stereotypes and stigmas. Not only being homeless, she gets to see what homelessness actually is and how homeless people are treated, right? Being a Black woman, being a single Black woman, and all of these things in conjunction are just thrown at her all at once. And we watch her on her journey as she faces these things. And at the same time, she meets a little boy who is actually homeless in New York City, who's a kindred spirit. And she then, through him, reconnects with her father because she sees her father in herself and why he raised her the way he did. And she also sees her younger self in this kid, which forces her to reconnect with her dad. And it's a powerful story, and I knew it when I wrote it, but as a creative, you're always gonna think your shit is the shit and your shit don't stink. But I'm happy to say that every single conversation I've had about this film project that we're in pre-production, to the tail end of pre-production for, everyone I've talked to has been pretty much like, holy shit, what the fuck?
Yeah.
How? When? Like, and I appreciate that because on so many levels, because again, as a creative, you're gonna always think that your shit is the shit. Regardless of how bad it is, it's just like, it's my art. But I do appreciate the fact, one, that we haven't even produced this thing yet, but the fact that so many people that I've talked to have not only been inspired, but relate to this story, whether they've been homeless, whether they have family that have dealt with homelessness, drug abuse, etc. Like, they relate to this story on so many levels. Single parent homes, like, it's such a relatable story on so many levels. And I want to be able to tell this story and not it be about homelessness, right? Because, and I'm sure we've all lived in cities where you've seen homeless people, and, you know, 9 times out of 10 or maybe less, what do folks do? Cross the street, act like you're on your phone, don't make eye contact. They're gonna ask you for money. For women, unfortunately, cross the street, clutch your purse because you don't know what's about to go down. And it's unfortunate that the stigma around homeless people is they're dangerous. And it's kind of horrible analogy, but it's our reality. It's kind of similar to the way the cops are treated, right? Like, cops have done some fucked up shit, but not all cops are bad cops, right? It's just what cops have done overall. And it's kind of the same thing with homeless people. And what I want to do with this story is allow for the audience to be able to get to know Lana, her name is Lana, Lana's soul before they learn and understand her situation, right? Because then what it's going to do to you as a viewer is it's going to make you go inside yourself and reevaluate the way you see the outside world. And maybe even how you treat homeless people, maybe how you treat your brother, maybe how you treat your friends, maybe how you treat your next door neighbor that you don't talk to. Because we have this way of operating in society where you look at someone and it's like, okay, those boots, pants, okay, I already know what kind of dude you are. I don't fuck with you.
Yeah.
We not gonna vibe. Yeah. Or you see them and you're like, oh shit, but I got them Berks. Oh, yep, you climb, we best friends. You know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly.
we go based off of these stereotypes that is such face value, and it's so unfortunate that like homeless people, people of color, women in general are treated a certain way based on the way they show up in society. And what that forces you to do is it forces you to shapeshift, right? It forces you to change who you are, to adapt to what you think that people want to see to make them comfortable. But what does that do for you? It makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm fucking passionate about this story, man. It's not the first story or the first film, but this is the story. This is the story that I really feel strong about in terms of not changing just folks' lives, but changing the perspective of folks who think that their perspective is the right perspective. You know, and it's not about me thinking that I have the right perspective. It's really about me putting something out there that's going to force you to sit back and be like, okay, cool, let me think about this for a second. Let me reevaluate the way I do things. I don't have to change who I am, whether I'm, you know, Democrat or Republican, but let me think about everything as a whole and really reevaluate the way I show up and the way I communicate who I am. Because we don't do that enough, you know?
Yep. And as a creative, as you've alluded to with, you know, the ways in which you're generating and contributing creatively, where do you draw your inspiration? I mean, you've mentioned so many people that introduce you to climbing, or your grandparents have just like fed your curiosity with boundaries.
Of course.
To, you know, the people to Lonnie, and like where do you draw that inspiration?
I mean, I want to say it comes from everywhere, but I think it comes from this void in my mind, and I want to say it's the first thing that came to mind as you asked that question was absence, and it's almost like the missing pieces to the puzzle, right? I don't operate, but like I see things for what they are, but I can also recognize what's missing really fast. And I think that a lot of my creativity comes from, it's like being in, it is the entrepreneurial spirit, right? Of like, wait, cell phones, they don't have cameras. We should put cameras in those things. We can make some money. It's kind of that kind of mindset, right? In terms of my creativity, but I look at it not so much as a business, but as through the arts, my way of being able to affect change in the world in a positive way.
I love that. And you also mentioned fashion. I'd love to jump into that before we quick.
Oh yeah.
Dude,
Let's
pivot this thing.
I'm
for sure. First and foremost, I already like chatted with you today. I was like, hey, I like that pullover. Is that Lululemon? And things of that nature. Tell us a little bit about your fashion experience, which is new to us. And I'm going to tandem that with the ways in which the outdoor industry, fashion has changed to this point.
Okay.
And your take on that.
Okay. Yeah, fashion. Fashion is, while I was in college, I started an internship at Sean John / Bad Boy Records during the time. And this was the height of, I don't know if you guys remember this, I Want to Work for Diddy.
Yeah.
So one of my friends submitted me an application for me to be on the show. I didn't know about this until after the fact, but they wound up calling me in for an internship. One of Puff's executive assistants, who then became the marketing director, I don't know if she saw my resume, it was through folks, I don't remember, it's been some time, but she pretty much was just like, I want him to intern for me. So I interned for her for probably a year, and shout out to Capricorn Clark. I will say this, she is Puff Daddy with long hair and nails and Gucci bags. And I mean that with the utmost respect, but to the T. And I dealt with that for a year. respectfully. And I think that I didn't intend on being at Sean John for a long time. You know, it was during the time of the Locks and Diplomats, you know, and music was everything. So I wanted to work in music. So when I got the email or the call, it was like, I'm gonna work in music. But here I was in the office folding clothes and calling DJs and different artists to come pick up packages of Sean John clothes. But I'm like, I get it, like you gotta do the grunt work. They're not sending me to get coffee, but I'm doing product placement.
Yeah.
I did that for about a year and realized probably 8 months in, I'm never gonna touch a CD cover. I'm never gonna be packaging CDs or be in the studio. It's not gonna happen. Fast forward, I left, I was bartending during the time, and I got a call to come back and work full time, and I wound up being there for about 6 years. And fashion was great. I learned a lot, met a lot of amazing people, but from day one, when I remember what I was wearing. I had on a brown and tan crew neck vest, and then I had a tan shirt on under it, short sleeve, and I had on these Tommy Hilfiger suede like loafers,
Drip.
and probably a tan or grape hand. And I remember sitting there being like, why am I dressed like this? And everybody got on hoodies and Jordans, but I'm gonna stand out. And I remember sitting there thinking like this, like I love meeting these people, but like I'm not starstruck. Puff is walking back and forth. You got these DJs, DJ Drama, his DJs, his producers, other artists, Little Kim, his wife, girlfriend, whoever, coming through, and everybody's like, oh my God, pictures, oh my God, you see? And I'm like, are we done with work yet? Like,
Yeah.
I just never really could subscribe to that lifestyle. And I think it had a lot to do with the fact that my daughter was pretty young at that time. She was probably about 1 or 2. And I knew I had responsibilities, but I also knew that me hanging out at an event after work with these folks, yeah, networking is amazing, but like, it's not gonna give me a bigger check, and I gotta take care of my kid,
Yeah.
you know? And again, I love the network that I created. I still am really tight with a lot of people in the industry, but I just knew out the gate, this was not for me. Like, I didn't see myself really being able to affect change in the fashion world, and I did not want to be a designer. And that was probably the only way. I was doing marketing. Product placement started out, but then I started doing marketing, which led into branding, which I enjoyed, you know, being able to oversee how this brand was perceived through social media at the time, Twitter and Facebook, but then also website development and whatnot. And that felt right to me, but I quickly understood that this was the art side of things, and I'm on this side. And I know y'all got me wearing 7 hats like everybody does in this building, but this is not my lane. But I learned that really fast, and I started consulting for small brands, doing marketing and also branding, and kind of slowly pulled myself away from that. And then fast forward a couple of years later, started working with brands like Outdoor Research, which is based here in Seattle, which I still work with, the North Face, Grimichi, which is an amazing Japanese brand who just came to New York 2 years ago, and I'm happy to say, and I'm super grateful that I was the first creative that they worked with in New York through the New York office to produce content for them. And when all that was happening, I didn't have the stability that I had working at Sean John, knowing that every other Friday that check was gonna hit and I'm gonna be good, and it's the same thing, and I ain't got to worry, I could pay my bills, but I knew I was affecting change. I knew I was doing something different, but I was doing exactly what I wanted to do, using the experience that I gained from fashion, but applying that in a space like the outdoors that was giving me what I needed.
I love that.
Yeah.
And shout out to Drama, who's still doing it.
Yeah.
Still hitting them records. Oh my God. Gangsta Grills is like the baddest.
Yeah, there would be no Jack Harlow if there wasn't a DJ Drama.
Facts.
Yeah.
Facts.
I am not rebutting that. Not one bit.
Big facts. Oh.
I am the wrong one to ask for a rebuttal there.
Raheim is dropping gems. The big facts here. Given that, where do you think the intersection of utility and like fashion in the outdoor spaces, and we've had this conversation a couple of times, where do you think that moves forward and through your lens?
Through my lens, I still strongly believe that every brand, including OR, and I say that with confidence, I love them to death, but they're behind. They're behind in a way where they are, and I get it, who their main consumer is in the cities that they're in and the folks that spend time outdoors, but they'll tap into creatives like myself to help create content for social because that's what's pushing the envelope to keep them relevant. But when it really comes to changing the narrative with large campaigns, that's still a struggle. And you look at what they're doing, like there's just in terms of like the utilitarian look and vest, and I think you had on the vest earlier, or did you have on the vest? Sorry,
Yeah.
the front
Yeah,
vest.
yeah.
Yeah, which is super dope, by the way.
Him. Yeah.
But like they're scared of stuff like that. That
yeah.
stuff scares them, and I think it makes total sense. But it's because it scares their traditional consumer away from what their gear is supposedly only for,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I've pitched many ideas to brands, including OR, to be able to shoot more street style stuff in a place like New York, like all the high fashion brands are doing. Like
Yeah.
y'all can do that
Yeah.
without a problem, and add some crossbody bags, add some fitted caps, like
yeah.
and not 5 panel hats that you only make. Like there's a way to push the envelope without changing who you are in your core DNA.
Yeah.
But it's still a struggle, and I get it. It's the core of their business, but I feel good about it. I feel good about it because no one's really done it yet or done it right. And there's still room for someone or folks like myself and people in my circle or sitting here with us today to help to change
Yeah.
what that's going to look like in the future for the outdoors,
Yeah.
right? Because, and I mean, it takes me back to a really good friend of mine, Brittany Levitt, who runs an amazing organization, Brown Girls Climb.
Yeah.
She used to be a guide in, I believe it was Denver, where she lived. I might be butchering that, but I believe it's Denver. And she told me a story when I interviewed her for an outdoor research piece some years ago, that for a long time she would always show up in the boots that she saw other people wearing because she likes to wear Chucks. So she would show up in her Chucks to guide, and people would like look to her because they know that she's the guide, but would like constantly look at her shoes and also question, do those have grip? Is that safe? And it's just like, y'all are paying me to
Right.
get y'all out here safe. Like, I know what I'm doing, but what that forced her to do was to conform to what the norm was from everybody else's perspective. And already as a black woman, she's already being suppressed in so many ways. And now she has to change the way she dresses in a space that she's super comfortable in,
Yeah.
but it's to make the people who she's tending to comfortable. And to me, that speaks volumes, because like that shouldn't be the case. When we show up outside, when you see our crew, you know we coming. From the colors to the fashion to the boots to the, like, you know we coming from. And like I said, models. One of my best friends, Terumi, she's a Japanese, not that that matters, but Japanese girl, amazing model, friend, leader, creative producer, director, stylist, sustainable stylist. Like when she comes, you know Terumi's coming from a mile away. And brands could benefit so much from having that displayed in their products, but they're scared.
Yeah.
They're scared.
I got one more question for you, and then I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah.
What's you mentioned your film project that's coming up next. What's your next project adjacent to that, being outdoor related from you as a consumer?
My next project adjacent to that, there's so much happening, but in terms of something solid, like I rarely fall in love in all aspects of life.
Yeah.
But when I'm in love, I love hard. And Home Free, this film project, that's my boo right now. That's my girl. That's my everything. That's my wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where my focus is. And it's unfortunately, it's put me in a place where I've pulled away from other work to really focus on this project, and it's hurt me in many different ways, as you can imagine, financially. But I know where my heart is, and I know what is important, not just to me and my now and being able to pay bills,
Yeah.
to be in the literal sense, but to be able to affect change for years, hopefully centuries to come, with folks being able to see the art that we're creating. So there really isn't, there's so much, and I could talk about a bunch of projects, but like that Home Free is that project.
Yeah. That's amazing to have the conviction, in
For
your
sure.
work, like in that capacity there. So blessings on that front there.